I got to tell you, my parents had a Taurus station wagon. That thing is a beast. If you wanted to jump any car over a snowbank and have it survive, the Ford Taurus was the way to go.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass. We're gonna die, 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 die hard.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we watched when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday nights searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? And do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your three hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me is my plaid-shirted friend, Gene Lyons.
Hallelujah, holy shit, where's the Tylenol?
And my red-faced companion, Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films while growing up still hold up. Each week, our audience selects from 4 movie choices that Big D and I have put on our respective Blockbuster VHS shelves. And they select the movie that we will watch and respond to. This week, I had selected Silent Night, Deadly Night, which was the 1984 classic that was protested, as well as Ernest Saves Christmas. Big D, you selected A Christmas Vacation from National Lampoon, and also The Santa Claus. Unfortunately, for me, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation won out.
Unfortunate for you, but fortunate for the listeners.
Listen, I don't like to watch Christmas movies that are played on TBS every Christmas season. I really wanted to watch Silent Night, Deadly Night, but you know what? Here, it's a democracy. There's no electoral college, so we're going to watch A Christmas Vacation from National Lampoon. So that's the movie of the week that we're watching. For those of you who've never seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, welcome back to the world. So National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is a 1989 American Christmas comedy, film directed by Jeremiah Chechik, and is the third installment in the National Lampoon's Vacation film series, was written by John Hughes and based on a short story from John Hughes in the National Lampoon magazine entitled Christmas 59. It actually debuted in the 1980. I think it was in December of 1980 of National Lampoon. Anyway, the film stars Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Randy Quaid, and 2 replacement children, which is a recurring theme in the Vacation series. Johnny Galecki, who we all know from The Big Bang Theory, and Juliette Lewis.
Yeah, this is the first time that they actually flipped the retrospective ages of the children. It had always been that Rusty was the older of the two. In this one was the first time that Rusty was the younger brother, in addition to changing actors.
Were they younger, or was it just that they were... Because I didn't get that. Johnny Galecki is just shorter than Juliette Lewis.
No, I think he's the little brother. But they after the first movie, when Anthony Michael Hall was doing Weird Science and had to choose between that or continuing on with Vacation, they just said, you know what, let's not even try to make the actors look similar. Let's just go completely to the opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think that's what got us here. But I think it's an interesting twist on the movies.
Yeah, I actually kind of like the fact that they kept changing the kids, and it was ambiguous of their ages, and I personally enjoyed Johnny Galecki and Juliette Lewis. Of the 4 Vacation movies that I count, because there were others, these are the children that I appreciate the most, like the actors who played the kids. I felt like they did the best job.
I think the first set, Anthony Michael Hall, and I don't know what the sister's name was, the actress. I felt those 2 were the most realistic and had the most genuine brother and sister relationship. This was a close second. European Vacation was the worst.
The other thing is that it was Jeremiah Chechik's first film that he directed. He was known normally for directing commercials. Now, I had no idea before I started doing some research, and I had seen National Lampoon's Vacation multiple times, Christmas Vacation. But it seems like, after knowing that fact, it actually makes sense that it was directed by a commercial director who had never directed a feature film, because it was just a collection of different scenes. It was almost like one big Saturday Night Live skit that just took place over and over and over again. But anyway, it's Christmas time and the Griswolds are preparing for his family seasonal celebration, but things never run smoothly for Clark. His wife Ellen and their 2 kids. Clark's continual bad luck is worsened by his obnoxious family guests, but he manages to keep going knowing that his Christmas bonus is due soon. All right, so that is the premise of the movie. Big D, play the trailer and let's dive into this movie.
After vacationing across America and throughout Europe,
Take it, Russ.
this holiday season, the Griswolds are going to play it safe.
Clark, we're stuck under a truck.
Oops. They're staying at home.
I give you the Griswold family Christmas tree.
Hope you're not getting sap all over your sweater, Clark.
All Clark wants is a quiet, old-fashioned Christmas.
Sorry. Got a little knot here. You can work on that.
What he's going to get is the gift that keeps on living.
Merry Christmas.
His family.
We didn't come to impose.
Oh, hell, there's plenty of room.
Do you sleep with your brother? Do you know how sick and twisted that is, Mom? Well, I'm sleeping with your father.
Have you got a kiss for me? You better take a rain check on that, Art. He's got lip fungus they ain't identified yet.
But no holiday could ever be more deeply touching.
We were gonna call, but Eddie wanted to make it a surprise.
If I woke up tomorrow with my head sewn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised than I am right now.
We're really gonna fly down the hill with this stuff.
So genuinely moving.
Can I refill your eggnog for you? Drive you out to the middle of nowhere? Leave you for dead?
More truly uplifting.
Can I show you something?
I was just browsing.
Or more down to earth.
Merry Christmas!
If Santa is smart, he'll stay well clear of this joint. It's a death trap.
Than Christmas with the Griswolds.
Everybody come out quick, look at the lights!
They want you to say grace.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
This year, let Chevy Chase light up your holidays. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
That thing had 9 lives. She just spent them all.
You crack up.
Since its release in 1989, Christmas Vacation has been often labeled as the modern Christmas classic. It's also the only sequel in the Vacation series to have spawned its own direct sequel, the 2003 made-for-TV release entitled National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation 2, Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure and the Search for More Money. I have never seen Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure. I assume that they only made it based upon that one scene in Christmas Vacation where Clark is looking out into a pool and it has some island music being played. Like it just seems like it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, the name alone indicates do not watch. And also the amount of time. I mean, you know, it's kind of like Jean-Claude Van Damme's Hard Target, and then they made Hard Target 2 like 20 years later. You know, after that, why are they making it in 2003? It makes no sense.
I think this also may have signaled the beginning of Randy Quaid's money problems that led him to be on the lam and also hiding out in Canada, where I think he still is.
Well, I actually have a hypothesis on Randy Quaid, is that I believe that Randy Quaid has always been this way. It's just that he was starring in roles that they could just turn on the camera and let him go. But you know, soon after the advent of cell phones and widely available recording devices, it became widely known that he's just like this in real life.
Yeah, getting into the money part of it, actually, the Christmas Vacation did very well. I mean, it debuted at number 2 at the box office, grossing nearly $12 million during its opening weekend, behind Back to the Future Part 2. The movie eventually topped the box office charts in its 3rd week of release and remained number 1 the following weekend. It went on to make $71 million in the United States while showing in movie theaters.
Yeah, what's crazy about that is it was released on December 1st, 1989. So I guess it topped the third week. It would make sense that was Christmas week. But the highest grossing films in 1989, the number one that I remember is, of course, Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. That made $474 million. But this was also the year of the Batman. Like you said, Back to the Future Part 2. But there's some other films that I didn't quite remember being this high, like Look Who's Talking and Dead Poet Society, which is fine, which is, acceptable. But then you have Lethal Weapon 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Ghostbusters 2, The Little Mermaid, and Born on the 4th of July. That rounded up the top 10. So this movie was not a top 10 overall grossing movie, but I think it has a little bit more lasting power than Look Who's Talking.
Definitely. Look Who's Talking was one of my favorites, again, as a child, but zero. I mean, literally the only joke in the entire movie is that there's a voice dubbed over a baby that just goes on and on and on. The toilet was kind of funny on Look Who's Talking. I take that back. I want your pee-pee and your poo-poo. It's brilliant.
Talking about the popularity of the movie, even today, there is a National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation collectibles website, which is dedicated to the movie, which you can buy a bunch of things from the movie, including Cousin Eddie's wardrobe, and even the Marty Moose mugs and punch bowl, as well as the Advent calendar home. You can buy all these, so that lives on even to today. So it shows you the long-lasting impact this movie's had on the holidays and commercialization of Christmas.
Before we enter the critique of the film, I would like to point out that even I, Gene Lyons, hater of all things and particularly collectibles, own two of the eggnog moose cups, and I drink out of them every Christmas. So, I can be affected by marketing and also the Yuletide warmth of Christmas Vacation.
I actually found those to be quite endearing. Like, there were a lot of Easter eggs in this movie, like looking back on it, like that have a heart that call back to the earlier films, like when they're first in the station wagon, number one, it's a callback to, they're on the road, they're in a station wagon, but it's a more updated station wagon. It's a Ford Taurus. But Audrey is wearing the beret, right, from France, from European Vacation. They're sipping out of the Marty Moose mugs, which call back to the original Vacation when they went to Wally World. So from a script perspective, purely speaking, this movie did a really good job of knowing what it was, right? Which is, a continuation in a lot of sequel movies. I can guarantee you, Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure doesn't have any of these nice little cute Easter eggs without probably bashing it over the head with you. We talked about this in our Home Alone review.
So I wanted to get down before we get started to the musical part of the beginning. When I was watching it, it just struck me how different comedies were at the time, and how it was very common in the 80s to have these animation sequences at the beginning. And so I was watching it, and you've got this great, everyone remembers the Christmas Vacation song who's seen the movie. And so I was like, man, that voice is really familiar. It turns out it was sung by Mavis Staples, who is, huge in the soul and sort of R&B area. But that wasn't actually the original song for it. Originally, the sequence was supposed to be have an original score. In the last minute, they put that Christmas Vacation song in to kind of bolster the film's pop attraction. So if you notice when you're watching it, it's in no way synced up with the animation. The animation will cut from clip to clip, and Santa's doing different things, and it has nothing to do with the way the song's going. But it works out okay. Again, this is one thing I really liked about it, was just that the animation sequence was its own little movie, and that was kind of nice, as opposed to just doing something lame like having like credits rolling with some generic music.
Well, I think this was also the first vacation movie that didn't have the song "Holiday" in it, right? It's just that Christmas Vacation song that they played, over and over. But also because this was a pretty popular movie and it had a lot of really good Christmas songs, no official album was released, which is surprising to me. And it actually didn't take place until the 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. Up until then, you could only get songs from the movie via bootleg and like bootleg vinyl stores that were, in college towns that I'm sure, Gene, you frequented quite often.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually weird that they, especially with such a large franchise, that they wouldn't take the opportunity to make the money off of there. I wonder if it was a licensing issue or something like that. But yeah, it's actually a pretty solid soundtrack when you get down to it.
Yeah. Now, did you guys see this movie in the theaters, or did you see it on VHS or DVD?
Yeah, my family is very, very averse to schmaltzy or nostalgic anything. And so we don't really watch, I mean, as a child, we did not watch Christmas movies or mushy movies or anything like that. We were strictly an action thriller kind of family and like just really inappropriate comedies. So this was not exactly in our wheelhouse. I didn't see it until I think adulthood.
Yeah, so the movie theater in my town was one of the old school, like it was a 2-story with 4 theaters. So it was a weekend thing. We had nothing to do. We would get a bunch of guys, go and buy a ticket for one, and end up seeing 4. So I think this was one of those cold winter days when there wasn't much to do in New York outside, and we decided to go see probably a triple play that weekend. But yeah, I saw it in the theaters, loved it. It was good to go back now and watch it again, and I think it's still held up pretty well with some minor chinks in the armor. But did you guys, overall, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I absolutely love this movie, and I think it still holds up for me, even though I grew up in Florida, and a lot of the themes are foreign to me because it takes place in Chicago, a cold winter area with snow, which we never have in Florida. This I agree. It's a modern day classic. It's our generation's A Christmas Story, right? And we grew up in school watching Christmas Story every holiday, right? But I think this surpasses. And now as an adult, I get a lot of the adult jokes that I didn't get before, like we'll get into here. But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I know you did, Big D. Gene, you have a differing opinion on this.
So I don't dislike the movie in the sense that I don't think it's a piece of garbage, For me, it was mainly the issue of I remembered liking it so much more. And that's kind of, the point of this podcast, right, is going back as an adult and seeing if it holds up. And, perhaps I don't have the same memories associated with you guys because I didn't see it as a child. But I remember the first time I saw it, I was like pretty into it. And, it's always been on, and I kind of recognized that it was on, and I'd be hanging out and, this scene and that scene. But when I actually sat down and watched it, it's like if you're watching like a football game or a soccer game and you pay attention when the crowd gets loud. In that sense, it's a funny movie. But when you actually watch it end to end, for me, it was tedious. Roger Ebert, when he reviewed it, pointed out that he felt like the scenes had all the necessary ingredients for a good scene, but just nothing that brought them together. I felt like everything was set up, but no one ignited, the fuse on the joke that was supposed to happen.
Okay, I don't know who this Roger Ebert is that you're speaking of with this review, but I want to say one thing. I've never been a fan, really, of fan edits of them, but I found myself thinking some of the worst parts were the slapstick over the top, him walking in the attic, hitting himself in the face with the boards, the whole ladder thing. I think you could edit this down, and I'd be tempted to do it. Do some of the major sequences and tone them down just a hair. We don't need to see him walking around the attic, slapping himself in the face with the plank 4 times to make it as funny. I think a lot of the scenes with Chevy Chase went over the top, and I almost think it would be funny to do a fan edit where you toned it down, and I think it would be even a better film.
Yeah, but even though, and I agree with you, the attic scene, in fact, I did a live tweeting leading up to tonight's recording, and I said the attic scene completely feels out of place for me. Like, there's no reason for it other than to showcase, why he loves Christmas so much, right?
I think, yeah, when he pulls out the video for the film reel for Christmas '59, and again harkening back to the source material for this, and he's wearing that outfit that's just like perfectly constructed with just the fur and the little hat and all that stuff. The stuff that's actually going on in the black and white film is some of the funniest stuff in the movie, I think. Just with his uncle and everything like that. That's pretty funny to me, actually. But I agree with Big D. The slapstick, the busting through the roof and getting slapped with the planks, it just was too much.
Yeah, the entire scene where he's on the roof and he slips and falls and grabs the gutter. We don't need ice to shoot across like 30 feet and into the neighbor's house. We don't need to see the sled have it turn into a jet rocket and shoot him 2 miles down the hill across the street. If you tone that down, just have him going super fast and almost break his neck. You don't need him going through like a fishing hut out on the ice. It was too much.
Wait a minute. So I will defend those scenes all day, good sir, and I'll tell you why. And we have yet to get into the plot of this movie, or scene by scene like we typically do. But one of the funniest parts of this movie, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus and I don't care actor who plays her husband, the yuppies next door, when that icicle shoots through the window and destroys their stereo, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus goes, "Why is the carpet wet, Todd?" I don't know, Margot. That's like the funniest, I think it's unintentionally funny scenes in the entire movie.
There are about 3 different times, Roger, absolutely right, in the movie where there are these lines that are delivered, the way that they're delivered, and it was, again, I don't know if they were intentional or not, but it kind of goes back to when Clark is talking to Mary when he's shopping, and he ends the whole scene with "no shit," and that's it, and it's like, and it's so funny, and I don't know why. I mean, I get it. It's the insertion of the profanity at exactly the right time and the delivery. And so for me, those are the parts that I can believe in, is that there was all this setup of just these lame boob jokes, but then you drop that "oh shit," and it's the payoff is great.
Chevy Chase, rather. I'm sorry, not Charlie, but Chevy Chase is at the peak of his game. And I don't know if Chevy Chase knows how funny he is when he's not trying to be funny. Does that make sense? Like when he's going over the top, when he's stepping on the boards, I'll agree with you, it's unnecessary. But there's a part of me that believes that Chevy Chase went to the director and was like, you know what I really want to do here? You know what gets me every time? You know what's really going to slay them? And he probably said slay because it's a Christmas movie. I'm going to step on some boards and they're going to hit me in the head. You know what I mean? But when he's having that whole like interaction, when he's doing like the little wordplay with the woman at the counter, that's brilliant. Like that's Fletch level Chevy Chase.
I have so many good parts I'd bring up, but I'm going to wait until they come up in the outline.
All right, so let's just dive in here to the outline. So with Christmas only a few weeks away, Chicago, again, was written by John Hughes. Resident Clark Griswold decides it's time to get a Christmas tree. It's time to get a Christmas tree. He gathers his wife Ellen, their daughter Audrey, and son Rusty, and then drive out to the country where he picks out a ginormous tree. Realizing too late that they didn't bring any tools to cut the tree down, they are forced to uproot it instead before driving home with the tree strapped to the roof of the car.
I want to start off here, and this is my entire note for the choosing the tree scene. Absolutely nothing funny about this scene. They're talking about freezing. They're talking about picking the tree out. They forgot the tools. It's this family tradition. The whole car ride, the running into traffic and zipping under that lumber truck and all that stuff. I was waiting for something funny to happen. First, now granted, this is only a 9-minute sequence from the car coming down the road in the opening sequence to when they get home. That 9 minutes, I found nothing, and I was getting really worried at this point.
Well, I think what they were doing was trying to draw a parallel to obviously the scene in the first movie where they're driving on the road. They have the encounter with other cars. They jump off the side. They do it again in the one in Vegas. They do the same shtick. And I think they went back to the well again and again. I didn't find it funny, but I got to tell you, my parents had a Taurus station wagon. That thing is a beast. If you wanted to jump any car over a snowbank and have it survive, the Ford Taurus was the way to go.
This was also the era where the Ford Taurus not only was a beast, but it was the star of other movies. Remember the Ford Tauruses in RoboCop and how badass they were? Because my family also had a Ford Taurus station wagon, and you're right, those things were nearly indestructible. Like that, what was that, the 1988 to 1998 Tauruses? Like those things somewhere... there's just a fleet of Ford Tauruses still running, probably somewhere in Cuba. I don't know.
I couldn't tell if they were also trying to set up the tone. In the beginning, I really felt bad for Clark. Clark is optimistic. He's getting them to sing. He's into the holiday. And Rusty, and they just shit on him in every chance they can get. They don't want to be out there. They're going to complain. They're going to grovel. He's trying to be positive and upbeat, and I felt bad for him.
It's weird because I was thinking as I was watching this scene, like, why are all in the 80s movies, why are all kids assholes? And I was trying to figure it out, and it finally struck me that it's a backlash against the previous generation, right? So adults of the 80s, grew up with a pretty dysfunctional group of parents. And I think that it was that hyper-structured, this is a backlash against parents, of the 50s and 60s, essentially. And so in that, though, I understood why so many parents of me and my friends growing up wouldn't let us go see a lot of movies. I mean, my mom did, but I get why my friends' parents didn't. And it was largely because, dude, do you want your kids learning to act like this? When Kevin in Home Alone is calling his mom a dummy, and here where like Rusty is, sassing his dad, I'm like, I would not want a kid to watch this.
No, like my dad used to have a temper, and he'd just quickly pull the car over and slap us around. I would have much rather had Clark Griswold, even though he was a buffoon most of the time, as my dad.
No, I actually enjoyed this scene because it was a callback to the original movies. And I felt like, the funniest line is once they land the Taurus, and he's like, oh, made good time. You know what I mean? Like, that part was great. But the problem that I had with it is, how big is this tree? It's what, 20 feet tall minimum? Are we supposed to believe that they just uprooted this tree with their hands? Like, how did this happen?
Hold on. You don't have a bigger problem with the fact that there's the Rocky Mountains right outside of Chicago?
Yeah, no, that's totally believable to me. It's a country.
Yeah, I noticed that when they in the end credits they credit thank you to the people of Breckenridge. And I was like, wait a second, what? And also, yeah, you got a problem with that, Raj? But you don't have a problem with the fact that there's a halo of light coming down from heaven upon this tree? That doesn't bother you?
No, I totally believe in all of that, guys. It's Christmas. It's a Christmas miracle. But I enjoy like the banter where they're talking about like the founding fathers. They would go out there and they would cut it with their hands. I mean, that's brilliant. Again, the way it's delivered by Chevy Chase, fantastic. I didn't, the scene underneath the truck and all that, I didn't need. I did like the interplay between he and the rednecks. I thought that was great. But other than that, it's a good opening sequence. By the way, stolen from, and I kid you not, Silent Night, Deadly Night. How that movie opens, they're all a family in a station wagon, and they're going to go see Santa Claus. Well, technically their infirmed grandfather, but afterwards they see Santa Claus. So anyway, soon after, Clark and Ellen, their parents arrive to spend Christmas, but their bickering quickly begins to annoy the family. Clark, however, maintains a positive attitude, determined to have a fun, old-fashioned family Christmas. He covers the house's exterior with 25,000 twinkle lights, which fail to work at first, as he has accidentally wired them to the garage's light switch. When they finally come on, they temporarily cause a citywide power shortage, forcing the power company to resort to nuclear generators for backup power. This also creates chaos for Clark's snobby, yuppie neighbors, Todd and Margot.
I'm glad you brought up Todd and Margot, Raj, because Todd and Margot were the only people I could relate to in this entire movie. That is my people, okay? So, and the first time I laughed, I wrote it down. Exactly, it was at 10 minutes. And when Todd and Margot come out and Todd goes, hey, Griswold, we're going to fit a tree that big. And I did not see it coming because the movie's been so fairly wholesome until this point. And he just says, bend over, I'll show you. And he's not even talking to Todd. That part just absolutely killed me. So I was pretty good with that. But here's the thing about Todd and Margot is that they are considered sort of the villains of this movie. Them and Mr. Shirley, is the fact that we tend to think of this anti-intellectualism that we're seeing today as like a new thing. No. This was around in 1989. The neighbors are mocked for being what? For being sophisticated, for drinking wine, for being anti-violence when Todd says, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, go over and attack them, And so, really, when you think about it, they're like the most chill people in the movie. If my neighbor was sending projectiles through my window, blinding me, like I would be and having an RV parked outside, like nasting up the neighborhood, I'd be pissed.
So you're okay with Margot, who questions her husband's masculinity. She doesn't want to get physical and kiss him unless he showers. She pushes him away. She's as cold a character as there is in the movie. I feel for Todd. I'd want Todd to come over to the Griswolds and have a cup of eggnog. Margot, she should get hit with that icicle in the chest.
I'm turned on by a woman who tells me to shower first. I think she's showing control. She's showing some power. That's a challenge. That's sexy.
Yeah, I think I tweeted out. I always during my live tweeting, I think I said, growing up, I always figured I'd be a dad like Clark Griswold. Now I'm more interested in being their yuppie neighbors. And most women I've dated in my life have been Margot, the ones that have, let's eat fruit trays and drink margaritas out of martini glasses on Christmas Eve, and don't touch me unless you shower first. You know what I mean? Like, they've been very, very cold, very, this is a matter of fact, and also big fan of jogging suits.
Yeah, now as a homeowner, I agree. I think my opinion has changed a bit there. The Griswolds would not be my ideal neighbor. I think, at least Todd and Margot would keep the lawn cut. There'd be no piles of trash or pumping sewage into the storm drain. So, yeah, I'd want to live next to them, but I wouldn't be friends with Margot.
So let's talk about this decoration of the house, though. So Clark is decorating the house, and Big D alluded to it before. There's a lot of physical humor here, a lot of slapstick, and so if we start with the ladder, and then there's a slipping on the roof, and at some point I'm just like, why are we going over this over and over and over again? The ladder, I mean, he escapes death 3 or 4 times on the ladder, and I'm just like, and it's not terribly inventive or anything new that we're seeing here. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think what made it much worse for me was the music they chose to pair this scene up with. It's goofy and over the top already, the scene. You don't need to put carnival music. It was like Benny Hill. It was just too much. And again, I don't want to think I'm shitting on the movie, but you make some subtle changes in the music as well. It was just too much.
Well, I mean, so I just recently decorated my house for the first time with Christmas lights. This is the first year I'm in my mid-30s, first time I've ever decorated. My family didn't really do Christmas lights. We did a Christmas tree, but my stepfather was a traveling salesman, so he wasn't around a lot of times, and it's end of quarter for him in the holidays, so he just wasn't around. We never really hung up Christmas lights. And I will say this, I just did a line of Christmas lights around my roof line. I can't imagine the amount of time that it takes to put up the kind of Christmas lights, the 25,000 twinkle lights imported from wherever they're imported from, that Clark did. I did a little bit of Christmas light shopping, not shopping, but touring around here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And there are homes that spend 2 months putting up Christmas decorations. That's just way too much. That's way too much.
Yeah, if I can tell you also, as someone whose father used to do some decorations, the stapler he is using, it is the heavy-duty Arrow stapler. That is the Ferrari of staplers. That thing will drive a staple so deep. Our entire, the roof line of the house had all staples that you just couldn't get out. But you never, ever staple into the shingles. That's a no-go. Clark made a mistake there, though.
So what do you do? What's the proper way to hang up Christmas lights on a roof shingled house?
I think they sell clips, but you never want to staple through shingles. You're just asking to have problems.
Well, the other thing is, isn't the number one rule of hanging up Christmas lights hanging them up when they're on? I hung up my Christmas lights when they were on so I could see, number one, do the Christmas lights work? And then number two, how does it look?
Yeah, I've never hung them up while they were on. I always thought that would be really dangerous because there's electricity going through the line while you're stapling it. That seems really dangerous.
I mean, listen, once or two, the body can absorb a lot of electricity, Gene.
Yeah, and at least now technology, they have those projectors you can just put in your front lawn, and they'll just cover your house with lights without having to staple anything.
Those things are shit. My neighbor has one. I'm not going to lie. He has that. He has a inflatable Yoda and some sort of inflatable reindeer. They make no sense. It's a minion. He has a minion and a Yoda. And then that, it looks terrible. It looks really bad. Basically, I have Clark Griswold living next to me is what I'm saying.
Okay, if I can bring up another topic. In the beginning, I told you I felt sympathetic for Clark. But in here is a scene of him going shopping where he's going to look for gifts. Clark is openly attempting to seduce the checkout clerk. He doesn't only pretend he's not married. He gives an excuse that he's getting divorced. Or he actually is already divorced. Do we believe that Clark would cheat on Ellen? This is the second time he's done it. I mean, he got into the pool with a topless Christy Brinkley. Is he an adulterer? Has he cheated before?
I don't think so. I think that this is representative of the zeitgeist of 1980s movies, where essentially you saw those T-shirts, that were like, that would be talking about your wife dying or something like that, or you had the whole like, take my wife, please, whatever. It's. I think this is just representative of, this was the sort of a relationship gallows humor of the 80s. I mean, to that end, I think one of the series that expanded upon this idea and really perfected it was Married with Children. In Married with Children, Al didn't really hate Peg, and he wasn't going to cheat on her at any point, but it was just like, that was the whole running gag, right? That being said, Clark was really creeping me out in this scene. And also just the 80s obsession with breasts. It was like breast was the only type of sexuality that mattered. Like if you looked at Budweiser ads or anything, it was always just boobs. That was it.
Dude, and also, what cashier, what do you call her here? She's the saleswoman. What's her?
Yeah, she's the lingerie saleswoman.
Okay, so the lingerie saleswoman, would she hike her skirt up halfway up her side and show the panties she's wearing to a potential customer?
There's a reason they call it the Magnificent Mile, Dick.
Yeah, it depends on how bad she wants to make that sale.
Did you also notice that Rusty comes running over? He knows this has happened before. He's spotting his dad going after another potential target, and he comes over and cock blocks his dad.
Well, listen, can we talk a little bit about the way that Rusty is wearing his Illinois sweatshirt? Like he's wearing his coat jacket kind of down by his elbows, but then he's kind of walking around with, like, is he peacocking? Is that what's happening here? Does he really want everyone to know about University of Illinois? Did University of Illinois like buy ad time in this movie? Like, it didn't make sense the way that he was wearing and walking around with his jacket.
Well, I think there was very prominent display of all the Chicago and kind of teams. I think they were really trying to show you. And there was that beautiful scene of the Mag Mile where they're showing you Christmas in Chicago, which is, I mean, it touched me in as a former Chicagoan. Like it really was emotional just for like this 5-second flash of it. But you see the Bears hat, you see the Blackhawks jerseys, you see this Illinois. I think it was just John Hughes, no stranger to being very proud of Illinois. I didn't take it as anything more than that. But yeah, dude was totally peacocking.
So you mentioned the model. So the model's name is Nicolette Scorsese. I don't believe she has any relation to the cinematic royalty Scorsese's, but she actually got her start known as the girlfriend of Antonio Sabato Jr. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Antonio Sabato Jr. also star in Hard Target 2? Like, is that the callback there?
That's really strange, but very astute, Roger. I believe he did. That's amazing. And by the way, we will never review Hard Target 2, not only because it's so recent a movie, but also because it's just such a piece of crap.
Yeah, not enough mullets in Hard Target 2. Like, you go to Hard Target for the mullets.
If you do want a review of Hard Target 2, Skronk, the podcast called Skronk, they covered it, and that's where I first discovered the movie. It is god awful.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about the Christmas lights, though, is wouldn't you want to put it up to a switch in the garage? Like, doesn't that seem like the logical place? Like, are we to assume as the audience this is his first time he's ever hung up Christmas lights and he didn't know how to do it correctly?
I mean, aside from the giant fire hazard that he caused, like, this was one of the things that I don't understand is that Clark is a smart guy. You look at his job, you look about the stuff he's describing, inventing, like a polymer that goes over cereal so that it doesn't get wet from milk, and like he's not a dumb guy. I don't understand why he's wiring stuff like this. And also the layout of the lights is, I mean, it's done really well. I don't understand this last part of it, but I guess that's part of the humor. I was very proud, though, of the family. When he does fail, though, there is a moment, again, where showing this isn't just a sheer comedy, showing that this isn't just everyone make fun of Clark, where, his family very warmly, like, they're there for him, and they let him know that it's okay that he failed. And the best part is when his mom, when his mom goes over and she says she can imagine what it would look like and stuff like that. There are little moments like that, which, yes, I admit, like, they're touching moments in this movie, and I'm glad that they managed to pull them off without it seeming too cheesy.
Yeah, and also because Clark could potentially be the food additive designer of the year. And, he's worked on the crunch enhancer, the non-nutritive varnish. I wouldn't assume that he would know how to run electricity. He did do, however, a nice detailed plan and of where he drew it out. But obviously that didn't involve weatherizing a power strip that he sticks outside the house. I think the Griswold house is burning down this Christmas.
I don't even know what that means, weatherizing it.
Well, you have to protect you can't put an interior power strip outside.
Why not?
Okay. You see, this is why.
Well, it's a good thing I live in Arizona. Anyway, while standing on the front lawn admiring the lights, Clark is shocked to see Ellen's cousin, Catherine, and their dense but big-hearted husband, Eddie, as they arrive unannounced with their children, Rocky and Ruby Sue, and also their Rottweiler dog, Snots. Eddie later admits that they've been living in the RV they drove to reach Chicago, as he is now broke and has been forced to sell his home, barn, and acres of land. Clark offers to buy gifts for Eddie's kids so they can still enjoy a wonderful Christmas.
Yeah, so I think Cousin Eddie was gold. Anytime he was on screen, I felt his energy. He had so many great subtle lines where he wasn't just beating you over the head, where he would just like suddenly, where he was talking about his older kids and his son, getting a career in the carnival, and that he's hoping that, he can move up in the ranks, and that his older daughter also had gotten hooked on the wild turkey. He is somebody I'd want to invite to my Christmas party. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Forget just his subtle lines. The subtle. By the way, my favorite was don't forget the rubber sheets and gerbils. Like, he slips that in there, and it's like, what? But his outfits, man. I mean, he was killing it on the style game. He had the mock turtleneck underneath the white sweater that you could see through the sweater and like see the black of the mock turtleneck. And then I don't know if you guys noticed, but the purple leisure suit or whatever that he's wearing when he's shopping with Clark, you can totally see his dick. And it's huge. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed that, but he's got a huge dong in those tight little pants. And it's just brilliant from top to bottom. Randy Quaid killed it in this movie.
Yeah, again, it's the subtle brilliance of the performances in this movie that make just this movie a classic, in my opinion. The fact that they're, again, running through a vintage Walmart, which... That rang true to me. Like, this is no super center. This is the old school shitty Walmarts, like what Walmart used to be and still is in a lot of cities. But they're just going through, and he's not buying anything other than dog food, right? Like the old Alpo, like the old boy Walmart brand. Like, oh my! If you ever fed your dog any of that, you knew the repercussions, and it wasn't good.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a Walmart in 1989 until I saw this time. I was like, oh my God, it's a Walmart. And you're absolutely right. Walmart was like a different place back then. It was felt very all-American, sort of thing. My favorite part of Eddie's family, though, is it's not Eddie. It's actually Rocky, because Rocky has – that kid just doesn't – just the faces he makes. I mean, he's brilliant. When Grandpa wants to get a kiss and he just stares at him, I go, oh man, this kid, he's gold.
So Rocky never speaks a single line in the movie.
I think that's what makes him so great. Yeah,
I think that's to get around child acting union laws. They can keep him on set for longer. But I mean, isn't that like a John Hughes thing? Like in every John Hughes movie, there's a kid that doesn't talk and is kind of weird and maybe a little slower than the other kids. Like, do you think he's making fun of the mentally handicapped in writing these type of characters?
I don't think he's making fun of the handicapped. I think he's making fun of more the less educated Americans. When he talks about Ruby Sue and they say, oh, her eyes are fixed. He goes, can't figure it, fall down a well, get cross-eyed, get kicked in the head by a mule, fixes it. He's making fun of that stereotypical middle American redneck.
Yeah, and again, bringing in the whole, in the sledding scene, when Cousin Eddie says, every time Catherine would turn on the microwave, I'd piss my pants and forget who I was for a half hour. Really funny, but when you think about it, it's just sad. Like, he's got a metal plate in his head. He's got to go to the VA, right? So like that. So it's like these sad topics of American misfortune, put right out there.
Yeah. Also, why is he having money problems? Because he got swindled by a television evangelist that he sent all his money away. He's a sympathetic character who's just unintelligent. Towards the end of the movie, Clark says, he's my idiot cousin-in-law. His heart is bigger than his brain. And Cousin Eddie thanks him. He said, I take that as a compliment. So he's just not bright. But I wouldn't say he's disabled.
I think what you're saying, though, Big D, is John Hughes is almost an elitist. Is that what you're trying to say? Because it makes sense, though, now, like how all of his main protagonist characters in most of his movies are rich, privileged white characters, and he seems to be making fun of the lower classes.
I don't think that he's an elitist. I think that he's a Cubs fan, I think that he is that specific niche of Illinois, like northern suburbs, like they're well-to-do, but they're not rich because, of course, they don't like the sophisticated either. All of his movies are evocative of that sort of like it's like an isolated and insulated white culture that existed in a very specific time and place in America, and it's fun to watch.
So with Christmas approaching quicker than ever, Clark begins to wonder why his boss, played by the inevitable Brian Doyle Murray, the second favorite Murray of all the Murray clan, has not given him his yearly bonus yet, which he desperately needs to replace an advance payment he has made to install a swimming pool. After a disastrous Christmas Eve dinner, he finally receives the envelope from a company messenger who had overlooked it the day before. Instead of the presumed bonus, the envelope contains a free year's membership to the Jelly of the Month Club. This prompts Clark to snap and go into a tirade about Frank, his boss, and out of anger, requests that it be delivered to the house so Clark can insult him to his face.
Okay, so Mr. Shirley. All right. I don't blame Mr. Shirley, and here's why. Is that I know that, Clark explains that he depends on the bonus as a part of his salary, but you shouldn't. I'm in my 30s. I don't have a family to support, and I know that I don't ever count on my bonus. The fact that Clark spent money on the pool ahead of time, that's just incredibly poor planning on his part. He has put his whole family in a very, very tough position, and now he's asking for somebody else to pull his family out. That is a bad father.
Yeah, but I don't think it's only the bonus. If he was a good boss who valued his employees but didn't give the bonus, it would be okay. But the fact that he doesn't know Clark's name until the very end of the movie, that he calls him every name in the book from Bill to William to Clark to Grizzleballs to whatever he calls them. And he shows absolutely no attention. He treats them like they're garbage. So the bonus was just the cherry on top. He's an unlikable character, and he's unsympathetic.
For me, the best part about Mr. Shirley was the rant that he inspires in Clark. That rant is amazing. I mean, I played it, I think, 2 or 3 times, and I've seen this movie before, but it was so funny. And the way he caps it off with the hallelujah, holy shit, where's the Tylenol? Like and just walks off, And at this point, this is my favorite performance of the movie by Chevy Chase, is when he does crazy really well. It's a very believable, funny, like it's not a scary crazy, but it's just like he's actually very entertaining when he loses it.
Yeah, growing up as a kid, we used to emulate this speech a lot, like on the bus. Like it was kind of, it was kind of a dirty thing because he kind of curses a little bit. But I remember as a kid growing up and thinking that like this scene lasted a lot longer. The speech lasted a lot. It's really not that long of a speech, but it is brilliantly delivered. My question is do you think the movie studio, being a business, knowing that they sell advertisements, do you think they sold this to Tylenol? They were like, listen, we're going to mutter your name, and in return, we want X amount of dollars?
No, I don't think Tylenol would want to be tied to a rant about ballless, homeless. I don't think that helps your brand awareness. But I do like the fact that it was believable that he slowly built. You can feel his stress level getting jacked up throughout the entire movie, little bit by little bit, little bit by little bit, to the point where he finally snaps here, to where I bought it. I would have been on board with him freaking out because you have everything going wrong. You have the Christmas tree setting on fire. You got the cat exploding. You got Cousin Eddie dumping the shitter in the storm drain. You have absolutely everything that could go wrong. And by the end, it was like falling down, but in a comedy, to where you finally get pushed to the edge. And Clark could have easily butchered his entire family, and I would have believed that too.
Now you're getting into Silent Night, Deadly Night territory. But one of the things that I didn't notice, a couple things that I wanted to, as I look back on this movie now with critical eyes for the podcast, a couple things that point out to me before we get here to the final act of the movie. When the grandfather is laying in bed, in Rusty's bed on the bunk bed, and he's like looking up at like the model, do you notice behind him there are a couple land tortoises that are like knocking shells? Like they're doing it. Like he just has that in the back of like on his wall. And then I didn't know this, but this same woman that he's fantasizing about during the pool scene when he's looking out the window and he sees the pool, I didn't realize that was the same. That's Nicolette Scorsese again, the woman from the original. I had no idea. I just realized that this watch, and I've seen this movie almost 100 times.
Yeah, forget about the grandfather looking up at the poster. The other grandfather has a flashlight and is probably whacking off to Sassy magazine. In the very beginning, the grandfather's laying in bed with the grandmother. She's asleep. He's got a flashlight out, and he's reading one of the daughter's Sassy magazines. She kind of moves a bit, and you can see that he's kind of caught off guard, like, did she catch him? And he keeps reading it. But that goes back to one of the things I love the most in the movie. The family dysfunction seems so genuine and real. Even though they were family and they fought and everyone had their own problems and every single old person in the movie complained about their ailments. They were talking about the fungus on their feet, their back, the pills that they have to take. In the end, it felt real because they were a messed up family, but at the end they came together. And I could almost watch that entire Christmas Eve meal where half are asleep. You have... What was the aunt's name who comes in, who wraps the cat?
Aunt Bethany.
Aunt Bethany doing the Pledge of Allegiance. That was so real.
Okay, I had a big problem with the Aunt Bethany jokes. I was getting a little pissed about this, actually, because Aunt Bethany clearly has dementia. And that's the entire joke for Aunt Bethany, is that she doesn't know where she is, she doesn't know what she's saying. And I think I was kind of surprised that at any point in history, like I can see where other things people might have thought they were funny and they got a little better educated on it. Dementia, at what point was dementia funny? At what point was like someone forgetting where they were and saying inappropriate stuff, funny? It really bothered me. And in contrast, Uncle Louis was great. Uncle Louis was so amazing, doing things that made no sense at all when he was talking to her and just pointing at his teeth and yelling. Like, it made no sense at all. But his toupee, his cigar, like Uncle Louis was everything I love, that ornery old person. And Aunt Bethany, I just felt bad for her. I felt like, why is the movie making fun of this woman?
Well, there's a couple of things that I realized about Aunt Bethany, this movie, that I didn't know leading up to it. Number one, I never got the joke when they're eating the Jell-O mold, and he's like, Aunt Bethany, does your cat like Jell-O? I never got that joke. I actually tweeted that out. Someone responded to me. Did you guys know what was supposed to be the joke about that?
At first, I thought it looked like there was cat poop in the Jell-O.
No, so it's not cat poop. She put cat food in the Jell-O mold. Apparently, that's the joke. I had no idea.
You could see the brown shape. And I thought it was almost that the cat had used it as a litter box.
No, yeah, it's completely went over my head. I never fully got that till now. But again, it makes sense. It's still not funny, but I guess it makes sense now. I understand where they're trying to go. And also, the actress who played Aunt Bethany was the voice for the original Betty Boop. Had no idea.
Huh. See, now Gene's got me feeling bad. Maybe I was having fun at the expense of a woman with dementia. I still like it.
Listen, they've made Disney movies out of dementia. Finding Dory and Finding Dory 2. Or Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. So I think we're okay. I think as long as it's done and presented in a comical way and no one's getting hurt, dementia's okay. I think that's perfectly acceptable. But anyway, so Eddie takes the request literally that Clark had asked for his boss to be tied up and brought to him. And he drives to Frank's mansion and forcibly brings the boss back to the house to Clark's obvious surprise. This doesn't stop him from confronting Frank about the cancellation of the employee's Christmas bonus. Meanwhile, Frank's wife Helen calls the police and a SWAT team storms the Griswold house and holds everyone at gunpoint. Frank decides not to press charges, though, and explains the situation to his wife and the authorities, who both scold him for his decision to scrap the bonuses and decides rather to reinstate them, with Clark, of course, getting an add-on of 20% to his salary.
We now see Chicago PD and what they will respond to. A child left home alone, they won't do shit for. If you are a wealthy business owner, you get the chief of police, you get the SWAT team, you get people swinging through the windows. That was like full measure. The police came in with force Where was that when poor Kevin was left home alone?
Yeah, we haven't seen the Chicago PD act like this since the Blues Brothers, right? Where they're just swinging in from every place. But I felt like this movie clearly was shot sequentially because they ran out of budget when they got to these cops' uniforms. They're just like, we're like plain black baseball caps and turtlenecks. Like, they just didn't care. They're coming in, whatever. But yeah, it was a great scene. And my favorite thing about the SWAT team, though, is when they come in and they got their guns on everybody. Did you see where Mrs. Griswold's hands were?
Yeah, it's on his nards.
Yeah, she's covering Clark's dick from being shot.
It's great. It's fantastic.
Did you also pick up that she lies to the police? She says, this is my family's first kidnapping. No, it's not. You kidnapped John Candy in the first movie. This is your family's second kidnapping at gunpoint.
Again, a fun callback to the original movie. But the other thing here is that I didn't get, and I tweeted this out. Why does the SWAT team take over Margot's house, Margot and Todd's? Why do they bust the door down there? That didn't make sense to me. Someone tweeted back because they wanted to set up snipers. But is that what you got out of it?
I think they couldn't tell which house they were in because Cousin Eddie kind of parked in the property between the two houses. So I think they went over there to make sure that somebody wasn't in that house and also maybe set up an overwatch position.
Yeah, Raj, I worked more than a decade in newspapers, and the amount of times that police went into the wrong address, you would be shocked. It happens actually quite a bit. And a lot of times they also just want to, like you kind of suggested, kind of form a perimeter or get the whole area under control. So they don't like any surprises. So, but it could have been multiple reasons. But the main reason was because it was hilarious.
Well, so afterwards, the family head outside with Rocky and Ruby Sue believing they see Santa Claus in the distance. Clark tells them it's actually the Christmas star and that he finally realizes what the holiday means to them. But Uncle Louis says the light is coming from the sewage treatment plant, reminding Clark of an earlier incident where Eddie had been dumping his sewage into a storm drain. Before he can stop him, Uncle Louis tosses a match that he had used to light a cigar aside, triggering an explosion that sends him flying into the family. Louis's wife, Aunt Bethany, who is incredibly senile, as we pointed out earlier, proceeds to sing the Star-Spangled Banner, and the whole family and SWAT officers join in, gazing at Clark's Santa Claus and reindeer set that's still burning and now flying into the distance. The entire Griswold family and the Shirleys and the SWAT team members then celebrate inside the house while Clark and Ellen happily share a Christmas kiss. After Ellen goes inside, Clark looks at the sky, happily smiling towards the stars and saying, I did it. He's also out there with Snot. Snot and Clark share a moment right there. To me, guys, this is weird. The movie just sort of ends. It's not a bad thing. It's just kind of strange. It just ends.
But this goes back to my thing. It's too much. The explosion's great. It throws Uncle Louis. Did we need it to shoot the plastic Santa and reindeer set into orbit in front of the moon? Come on.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the era of E.T., so you gotta have that sort of moment, and then also you had the earlier when Clark throws a tantrum in the front yard and he punts Santa, which is one of the best. I mean, that angle of that kick is just brilliant. There's a recurring theme of this Santa being sent into the sky, and and again, if you think back when Ruby Sue asks Clark, if he's Santa, and he says, I'm sure I'm not. I think that this is kind of he is. He's not Santa, but he's the guy that can make Santa fly.
Is this also the first time we've really seen Clark win? He got exactly what he wanted. His father had the conversation with him where he was telling him it was okay to fail and you're doing your best. And he passes the baton for 'Twas the Night Before Christmas to Reed. There was a lot of good heartwarming moments in here. And I felt good that Clark had won because he takes so much abuse through all the movies.
I think every vacation movie, for the most part, has a happy ending. I mean, you don't have to look too far to Vegas Vacation, where they all win lotteries and cars, right? Like they all win out at the end, and in Vegas, or in the original Vacation, they're all they get to experience Wally World, which is what he wanted. So I think at the end, it's not that bad.
Hold on, he held an employee hostage at gunpoint. Clark is going to jail. That's not a happy ending. He's a domestic terrorist.
But he gets to ride the rides, which is what he wanted.
Yeah, and then he goes to prison and somebody else rides him.
That's not what I remember of European Vacation. But overall, guys, I mean, listen, I tweeted this out that I was afraid of reviewing this movie because I enjoyed it so much. And even going back and rewatching it, I still think it holds up. It's to me, it's on in the background. I was talking to my family members in Florida, and I told them I was watching this movie for the podcast, and they were like, "Oh my God!" Like, you know, it was just on the other night, and oh, there it is again. Like it's on TBS. It's on every channel on basic cable throughout the holidays. It's the new modern day Christmas story. It's the Elf of the '80s. I really enjoyed it. I still think it holds up for me. It's the perennial. It's on my playlist, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it was good. I enjoyed it. I just keep thinking how much better it could have been with some scenes dialed down 5%. But overall, great movie. I'd watch it again. I will watch it alone for the entire squirrel scene throughout the house where it flies out of the tree. It was great. I will watch it again.
For me, I think, gentlemen, I'm sad to say that it's time to retire this movie. This movie has had its run. It was funny while it lasted, but having seen Home Alone just last week and comparing it to this, Home Alone was much funnier. The pacing was more modern. I felt that it gripped my attention. I was entertained the whole time. The minutes flew by. This one I kept thinking, is it over? Is it over? Is it over? The setup was too long. It's too many of the same jokes. It did not work for me. And I'm not saying that it's a matter of time either, because there are older movies, for instance, White Christmas, Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life, that are Christmas classics that I absolutely love. But this one for me, it's too dated, it's done, and if I never saw it again, that'd be fine.
All right, so going to our Shat meter, for those who've never listened to the podcast, the Shat meter goes at a scale 1 to 5, 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. So basically it's how many wipes it would take to get this movie off your bum. I personally am going to go with it's a 2-wipe movie for me. It's not necessarily a ghost movie or a ghost Shat, but it's definitely a great movie that I wouldn't mind watching over and over again, especially around the holidays. With all the Easter eggs, Chevy Chase at the top of his game, the kids, Doris Leachman. Like, this movie it's before, I think it's the last of the National Lampoon Vacation movies that I can actually bear to sit through and watch. It reminds me of my childhood, and it's a family holiday classic in the Roger Roper family movie carousel.
Okay, so dovetailing into that, I think in any other time of the year, if it wasn't the end of December, I think it's a 3-wipe movie. If it's July, I'm not stopping to watch it. But at this time of year, I will. So I think I got to stick with what it would be. It's a 3-wipe. It's good around the holidays. Maybe it edges up. But I disagree. It is not Chevy Chase at his best. Caddyshack is his best. He is subtle. There's a charisma that he has, much better. Here, he's even a shadow of that former self. But 3 wipes is what I give it. Around the holidays, I will watch it, though.
I feel like this is the kind of movie that's never going to get off my ass, no matter how many times I wipe. But I'm going to go with 4. I feel like it's not a complete disaster. As I said, there are a lot of times. I found myself laughing out loud a few times. So it's there. But again, like Big D said, it just needs to be condensed. This needs to be a tighter movie. I think it just let itself go. And also, I blame a lot of that on the directing. That from the editing and directorial perspective, they could have shot things differently, instructed the actors to tighten it up, not let Chevy Chase have so much a long line, or perhaps he was, even instructed to do certain things. But again, I wouldn't scream shut it off, but I'm definitely not going to ever own this in my library.
That ends our review of Christmas Vacation as recommended by Big D. I think perennially, from a consensus perspective, 2 out of 3 of us like it, and Gene is the only naysayer that won't be playing it this holiday season.
What's the average?
What is the average? So I gave it a 2. D gave it a 3. You gave it a 4. So what is that? 4 plus 5? That's 9. So that's a 3-wipe movie right there. Yep, there it is. Go and watch it. Please don't send hate mail. I think they're going to send hate mail on this one. Anyway, Gene, where can they listen? If they want to send in hate mail, how do they do that here at Shat The Movies?
If you'd like to send in hate mail, you can go ahead and hit us up at hosts@shatthemovies.com. We're happy to hear from you. We'd love to see your movie recommendations. If you'd like us to consider stuff or give us any feedback on what I'm doing right or what Roger's doing wrong. Also, I'd like to say thank you to people who have visited shatthemovies.com and signed up to receive shout-outs. If you go on the website and there's a little slide-out, little black box that says, sign up here and we'll give you a shout-out. So far, we've had quite a few. I'd like to say thanks to Mom Lissa, who is a huge fan of Fast Times, which is something we have not covered, and it's a great movie, one of my favorites. Also, a shout-out to Tom, to Nick from Sydney, Australia, and to Chuck Freihofer, who is also a big fan of the pod. So anyway, go ahead and visit us at shatthemovies.com, sign up for a shout-out, or just email us at hosts@shatthemovies.com.
Yeah, we did receive one Shat email to the inbox. It comes from King for Life. I don't know. I think that it's the Roman numeral for it. Anyway, King for Life writes, after listening to Gene get wet when John Candy showed up in Home Alone, I realized it actually tempered the wild Persians hard enough to where I didn't want to choke him out. I want more John Candy and think we should just load the box to make it happen. Spaceballs, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, and the Great Outdoors. Enjoy the podcast, fellas. Keep up the good work, Raj and Dick. More Gene's microphone cutting out in 2017. That comes from King for Life at our Shat The Movie, host at Shat The Movies inbox. So if you want to send an email, we'll read it on air. We'd love to hear from you. Gene, he obviously listens to the podcast. He knows you're a wild Persian.
Yeah, King for Life. Here's the thing. You might think of me as your enemy, but I'm not your enemy. You're a John Candy fan. In my book, that's brilliant. John Candy is one of my favorite comedic actors. I've seen, I think, pretty much everything he did and just loved almost all of it. So, my wild Persian heart. Yeah, I might just spend, you can catch me on my other podcast, which is me ululating for 45 minutes straight. We'll have that up coming out next. It's shatoniran.com.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. If we could have a John Candy week where we just stuff, the voting full of John Candy movies, I think that would be wonderful. But anyway, you can also catch us on Instagram and social media networks. We're at Shat The Movies. You can also find us on Facebook. Please like us there. Download our podcast everywhere fine podcasts are found. Share that with friends and leave a 5-star review. We love receiving 5-star reviews. It's how we grow the podcast. Also, if you enjoy what we're doing here, we're also over at Shat on TV. We just finished up interviews with actors from the TV show Westworld, and we're about to start Taboo, which is on FX, stars Tom Hardy. So subscribe there and listen to us as we start that endeavor up in January. Then we're going to follow that with American Gods. But you can catch everything on shatthemovies.com or shatontv.com. Before we sign off, Gene or Dick, is there anything else that we want to say before we close things down and get ready for our next holiday movie bonus that we're going to release?
No, that's it. Everybody be safe.
This is us saying we wish you a Merry Shat Christmas and a very shatty New Year.
A happy poo year.
A happy poo year. That's it. Thanks, guys, so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
But it was sweet when they killed